We are in Guadeloupe. We've been here for 2 weeks now and done a lot of amazing things. Guadeloupe is a beautiful place and we've shot a lot of video, and I'll put all that together in the coming weeks. But today is a down day where we don't do a whole lot on land, and I figured I'd take the time to sit down and go over each of the upgrades that we've done to our boat since we took delivery of it, and give an opinion on how those upgrades have worked long term. I'll also dig into whether we would even do those upgrades again given the chance. So let's talk about power. When we first got the boat, it came with AGM batteries. We got the generator option, so we have a 9 kilowatt generator, and we have both engines with alternators that can also charge batteries. That's fine, depending on what kind of cruising you're doing. Since we knew we were going to be doing longer term cruising, 6-8 months at a time, we knew that we needed a little bit more than that. So we had Just Cats build a solar arch and install 4 375 watt panels totaling 1500 watts. That's our solar. For batteries, we replaced the 3 AGM batteries that came with the boat for the house bank with 3 300 amp hour lithium batteries. Now we manage all this power with Victron equipment. We have a Victron inverter, charger, solar controller, all the shebang, and the touch screen. So it's a really nice system and it works very well for us. So how has it held up? So we've been using the system for 18 months now. We had it on while the boat was on the hard as well because it powered a few things like dehumidifier, cameras, and that sort of stuff. This has been the perfect configuration for how we sail. We don't have any intentions of trying to be completely off-grid. To do that, I think we would need twice the amount of solar, and there's just not enough space up on the deck to put all that on. Let me explain. If you look at our usage, you can see that we use about half and half generator and half solar. Next season, we may use a little less without the teenager being around, but I think generally we would need twice the amount of solar to support this level of consumption. The system has really held up well. In fact, we've had 0 problems with it. We've had to do a few configuration changes here and there, but that was just to suit better charging from the generator. It's worked as intended. It's the right amount of solar. It's the right amount of battery for how we use it. This upgrade, like all the other upgrades, was done right in the middle of COVID. So I could put the price on the screen, but it's not going to mean anything. Prices have changed a lot in 18 months. Understand though, this was the biggest expense that we put into it. This was the biggest upgrade that we did. We use it every day, we rely on it, and it was well worth doing. Would we do anything different if we were to start over today? Probably not. I think the solar panels have come a little bit forward in the last 18 months, so we might end up with 400 watt panels, but that's not going to be noticeable in the way that we sail. Batteries, I'm sure capacity has expanded a bit in the last 18 months, but again, nothing revolutionary that would make me hesitate and think, gosh, we should have done this differently. This system is great, and I don't think we'd change a thing. Consuming all of our water.
I haven't consumed it.
You consume at least half of the water on the boat.
That is not true.
I have data.
Really?
Yeah. Look, how many times have you gotten ice today?
This is my first time, Papa.
And it's empty.
It's my first.
And the ice maker's on right there. So water is pretty important to us on the boat. And we've met boats that have traveled for years and they don't have a water maker on board. But we wanted the convenience of being able to make water when we needed to. So we installed a Spectra Newport 400C water maker underneath the port aft bed. This is William's room, and the water maker is right underneath here. Please ignore the mess. But it's running right now, and you really can't hear it. It's very quiet. It produces around 15 gallons an hour, which to fill up one of our 2 water tanks takes about 6 hours. So we as a family use about 25 gallons a day. Every 4 days-ish, we'll go and fill up one of the tanks. So we don't run the water maker a huge amount. It really doesn't seem to use a ton of power. It draws about 50 amps while it's running. It seems efficient at what it does, and it does its job well. So long term, how has this held up? Well, we've had it for 18 months. We've made almost 11,000 gallons of water, and we've had 0 problems with it. The one problem we did have was self-inflicted. I tossed an O-ring into the ocean and didn't realize that I needed a spare for one of those. So aside from that problem, this thing has worked great. It's easy to use. It's easy to maintain. Changing the filters is a breeze. It's easy to decommission and commission. All in all, it is a great unit and we're really happy with it. And I expect many more years of use out of it. So will we change anything? I don't think so. I think the calculation you really need to work with is how much power it takes to create a gallon of water and work from there. And I think that this unit is probably just at the right efficiency for what we use. The bonus is that you can run it off of batteries and that it's nice and quiet. But ultimately, you want to produce as much water as you can with as little power as you can. So that's something you should look at. This has been a great unit. I don't think that we would change a thing. All right, let's talk about cabinetry. We had a few cabinetry things done when we took delivery of the boat because there are things that it seems like every Leopard 45 owner does to make space layout a little bit better in the lounge and in some of the hallways. So the first thing that we did was to cover up the port side hallway with panel. As you can see, we're kind of a clutter family and we just have everything out. So we ended up having this space used right away as soon as we put this on top. You got to look at storage in 2 ways on a boat. You have your primary storage, which is stuff that you need to get to often. And then you have your secondary storage, which is the pain in the ass storage that takes a little while to get to. This created a lot more primary storage for us, and we use it every day. And speaking of primary storage and secondary storage, there's storage underneath all of these seats here. They're difficult to get to. You have to lift out that cushion and then that cushion and pull it out. Likewise, on this one, you have to lift out that cushion and that cushion to get to it. This I would consider secondary storage because it's a pain in the ass to get to. But we made a cabinetry change to convert this secondary storage into primary storage. In this hallway here, we had a door added to the back of the seat storage. So you can look in here and what was pain in the ass storage is now a pantry. I added some motion detecting USB lights in there to make it cool, but yeah, this is all primary storage and it's very useful. We use this daily as well. So over time, yes, this was definitely needed and well used to upgrade. There are a couple of other things that Leopard owners do, like this cabinet over here. They'll cut it in 2 and add an extra door here to get to this space back in here. We didn't do that and we're not missing it. We use that space anyway. You just got to kind of shove things in there. So these were well worth the upgrade, and given the chance, absolutely we would do it again. Just making secondary storage into primary storage is well worth it, and we use it every day. One of the larger upgrades that we did to the boat was this helm enclosure. It encloses the helm, but it also encloses the cockpit area here and then over here. Now, we kind of screwed up on this one. When we took delivery of our boat, I had not thought we were going to need a helm enclosure. We were going to try it out without a helm enclosure and see if we needed it. But after talking with a couple of other boats that were taking delivery at the same time, we realized that probably was going to be a mistake. So we put our order in, and again, because of COVID, they had a shortage of materials, and Creative Canvas wasn't able to just do it like that. There were a lot of people ahead of us. So they came and took measurements to make it. They ended up making it while we went and spent a month in the Bahamas cruising around without a helm enclosure. We confirmed there that we definitely needed one. We went through a couple of squalls and a couple of rainy days, and it was miserable. Being in a squall or trying to anchor in the squall with no helm enclosure was almost impossible. And when it would rain, water just comes down here and fills in the cockpit. It all drains out. It doesn't fill, it just drains through the cockpit, but it makes a mess, and it just gets dirty. So we realized pretty quickly we needed to get that helm enclosure. So we got done with our first month in the Bahamas, and we went back to Florida, and Vlad and his team put the enclosure on, and we have been very, very happy with it ever since. This is an upgrade that we get use out of every day. For example, we're in Guadeloupe right now, and it's much more rainforesty here. In fact, if you look out in front of us, there's always rain, and it pushes across these mountains, and so we're getting rained on every day, and this enclosure keeps everything dry. So we definitely get good use out of this upgrade. Now, if we were going back in time and making the decision again, I think we would look at a few different things. One, we would have ordered it way early so we could have had it the first month in the Bahamas, because again, it was that miserable without it. Two, we have a furling line for our downwind sail that goes, we don't have the downwind sail on, but it goes all along here, comes back to here. The way that this was set up before was it was just one large panel here and one large panel here. So if you had the side enclosure on, you couldn't really use the furler. And we didn't use the furler. We sailed the whole season in the Bahamas and just furled from the front deck. But last summer, I took the side panel off, I mailed it to Creative Canvas and told them what I needed. They ended up adding a door to the enclosure and mailed it back. We zipped it in, and now we can use the furler from the helm. This is a big deal because that means you only have to have one person furling and unfurling the downwind sail. It's really useful, and Creative Canvas did a great job at being flexible and adaptive to how customers want to use their product. So that's really the only thing that I would change, knowing what we know now. It was a great upgrade, 100% would do it on any boat that I get. When you get your boat, it comes with all new lines, and they're fine, they work fine, but we upgraded a few different things because we had read we probably should, and because we experienced some problems with what came with the boat. So let me point at the lines and I'll show you what we replaced and didn't. This is the Traveler, we did not replace that. Main sheet, I can't remember if we replaced this or not, but I believe this is original. Genoa sheets, we replaced both of those. Spinnaker, original. Reefing lines, replaced those. Genoa furler, original. So why did we replace some of these lines? The big one that we changed, the main halyard, we replaced because the main halyard that came with the boat was, in my opinion, sized a little bit too wide for the clutch, for the way that it's rigged. It just didn't work very well. When you drop the main, I know it's a new boat and this is just going to happen anyway because everything's new, but we would grease the tracks, and no matter what we did, the sail would still be a third of the way up when we dropped. which is fine unless you're in really rough seas and you want to go up there and pull it down or just look like a mess. So we replaced it with a slightly smaller Dyneema core halyard, and that seemed to fix all the problems. This thing drops great. The sail comes all the way down. We don't have to mess with it anymore. Now the Genoa sheets, we had the starboard Genoa sheet by the end of last season started developing a bit of a bulge in it. And I don't know what it was, but I didn't want to trust that to my sail. So I untied it and flipped it around and used the other end of the sheet because it was rather long. And that worked fine the rest of the season. And then I went ahead and just replaced them with Dyneema core lines that have worked great ever since. That's a fairly inexpensive change, and I think it was the right one. The reefing lines, those are Dyneema core, and the only reason we replaced those was because we'd seen something in the Leopard forums. Other boats that we had talked to recommended it. I don't know enough to know whether this was a worthwhile upgrade or not, the reefing lines specifically. They work great. Maybe the old ones would have worked great too. And they were kind of expensive because they're really long. So I don't know about doing that upgrade, but definitely I would replace the main halyard and the Genoa sheets at a bare minimum, and then look at the other stuff and just see how the lines wear. These were worthwhile upgrades, you know, not counting the reefing lines. Being able to go back and choose again, I don't think I'd replace the reefing lines. I think I'd take a look at it and check and see what kind of wear we're getting and whether we have difficulty with it, and then make a decision afterwards about upgrading. It's not something that's going to deteriorate in your first year or where you'll see a problem in your first year. So I think it's one of those things that can wait, and you can look at it and make a decision after using it and seeing how it works. Another change that we made was we added a furling line for our downwind sail. Downwind sail comes with a furler and a furling line that you use by sitting here on the deck and let the sail in or out. We ran a line from here all the way along here. Please ignore our rusty stanchions. I will be cleaning those. It comes back here to this block and then is supposed to be used with these winches, like I said before. And like I said before, we never used it our first season because our enclosure didn't have a hole in it, and we liked having the side door on. Now that we have an enclosure that we can open easily, this is useful, and we have used it. We've used it several times this season when we had the Code Zero sail up, and it was great. I could do it all myself. We didn't have to have somebody down here tugging and fighting it. I could be at the helm. I could use throttles if I needed to take pressure off the sail to get it furled. And it was just a much more controlled furling of the sail, which was kind of hard to do when you have somebody down here and you're way back there trying to figure it out. So this was very useful as long as the enclosure is suitable for it. So looking back, would we have done that again? The amount of times we use our downwind sail are pretty low because all we've been doing is heading east. We hung out in the Bahamas and we used it a few times there. We've only been going east until just now, so we haven't really been able to use it this season, but I would imagine next year it will be extremely useful. So really, you got to look at it how you use your sail. If you're going to use your downwind sail a lot, then I think this would be a really convenient kind of upgrade to do. If you're not sure, then wait. I don't think that this was incredibly expensive, but it wasn't cheap. So it might be a place where you can save a few pennies, have somebody furling down here on the front deck, and if you find you're using your downwind sail a ton and this is a pain, you want a little bit more control, then yeah, go ahead and do this upgrade. So I don't think we would have done it year one. Next year, we probably are going to be thankful that we got it done. Okay, the rain's popping down from the island, so I'm going to go down below and let's go talk about appliances. So when we got the boat, we knew that we were going to be on the boat the majority of the year, and we have a large family and lots of friends, so we knew we were going to have people coming and going on the boat, and a washing machine was pretty important to us. We got the 4-cabin version of the boat, and there's no standard option for a washer dryer, so we had to add that aftermarket. We ended up having to sacrifice one of the toilets. So at the bottom of the stairs down here to the port side, this is where the washing machine is. And it was cabineted in. And this bathroom has become kind of a laundry room. This is where we keep all of our chemicals and cleaners. The sink still works and the shower still works, but this is really just our laundry room at this point. It was a sacrifice we were willing to make though, because we have a lot of people coming and going on the boat, and being able to wash here as opposed to going to town wherever we are and trying to find a laundromat and deal with all of that, it's a great convenience to have this on our boat. So we've been using this for 18 months and we have had zero problems. It still washes clothes great, it still dries them great, it's worked perfectly, flawlessly, haven't had to do a thing with it. Would we do this again? Well, absolutely, we'd do it again. And I think we'd go with this same model. It matches the amount of laundry that we need to do and the amount of water and electricity that we're willing to give up to do that laundry, if that makes sense. This is a Splendide. The model is WDV2200XCD. And I think if you're looking at other models, you're gonna have to balance how much power and water those models take to get done the amount of laundry that you're going to be doing. And that's the equation for this thing. So I don't think we'd change it. I think the location is good. I think the model is good. All in all, I think it was a really good upgrade and we're very happy with it. So after our season in the Bahamas, we realized a couple of things. We found there were a couple of things on the boat that we didn't use and a couple of things that came with the boat that we didn't like appliance-wise. First was the oven. We used the oven once and made some really crappy burned biscuits in it. It was very uneven heating, very small space, no temperature on it. It was just numbers. It was a pretty useless oven. And we used a toaster oven the whole season. So we looked at it, and when we hauled out, the guys at Zimmerman said that they could take out the oven and build us a cubby hole for our toaster oven. And it worked out great. If you look here, the toaster oven fits in there, and they were also able to make some space where we store frying pans and that kind of stuff. There's a fiddle here to keep things from sliding out. They didn't have the material, this material that Leopard uses, so we used black, and it actually ended up working out great because this gets dirty. We cook on it a lot. It was a great upgrade, and we use it daily, so it's well worth doing. I probably would have done this before we left the dock when we took delivery of the boat. It has been that good of an upgrade, and it was relatively inexpensive. There was some cabinetry work to do. The harder work was adding another plug to here on its own circuit. We wanted to be able to run that appliance and also be able to run the microwave or the coffee maker at the same time. Please excuse William's dirty pan. He's going to clean that. Anyway, it was a great upgrade, and I'd certainly do it again. I wish we could have done it earlier. We just didn't know the oven sucked. Oven sucks. If you're going to cook, buy a toaster oven and get rid of the oven. The last appliance thing that we did was we changed out the fridge freezer unit that came with the boat with an isotherm unit. The old unit was 2 drawers, and they kept temperature sometimes. The freezer almost froze things, and the refrigerator kind of kept things cool. You had to defrost it very frequently. And so when we pulled out on the hard last summer, we looked at doing a unit like this because we had seen a couple of other boats did the same thing. This fridge freezer is awesome. There's tons of storage in it, and it's not drawers, so you have a much better use of space. Freezer side, it looks small, but it goes way back in there and you can cram a lot of stuff in. This unit, plus our outdoor fridge, plus our under-counter freezer, is more than enough refrigeration for us. We have a portable unit that we rarely use. We got it at the beginning of this season, and we used it when we loaded up at Costco and brought a bunch of food with us. We ate all that food and we haven't turned it back on since. This seems very sufficient for 3 people and having visitors. It's great. We use this every day. We've had to defrost this thing, I think, twice since we started, and it's almost essential to how we do things on the boat. If we could go back in time, I would definitely get this done. I don't remember this unit existing back then, or if anybody could get it, because it was, again, COVID, but we were able to find a unit at the end of last summer, and it's a direct swap out. It sounded like the install, I wasn't here for the install, but it sounded like it was very easy for the guys at Zimmerman to put it in. I don't think it was easy lifting it up to the boat on the hard, but I think putting it in was pretty easy. So I'd highly recommend this upgrade. Definitely would do it again. So I mentioned that we got a new plug and a new circuit for the toaster oven. We also did a few things with plugs besides that. We took this plug and moved it onto its own circuit. We added a plug here in the cockpit behind the seat here. We also added a plug up here for Sonos and Iridium Go. So all these plugs we found useful, they've held up, they've been great, and highly recommended. I'm glad we did them. I would do them over again. I think this plug location here in the cockpit would probably fit better if it was back down here, like back against that wall. I'm back against the wall over here, but I don't think that's possible because that's where the batteries are and there's not enough space for it. That's really the only thing I would change. They've been a great upgrade. It's relatively inexpensive, and you can run a bunch of different appliances off the batteries without having to choose one and then choose the next and then choose the next. So I mentioned this plug up here for Iridium Go, and we had XM radio. You'll also notice that neither of those are there. What we have instead is Starlink. Starlink has replaced a lot of things. So I want to talk about the electronics that we upgraded on the boat. When we got the boat, we installed Iridium Go. It's still right there, but it's inactive. Now, Iridium Go was useful last season for a couple of reasons. You can get weather data remotely when you're offshore. You can track the boat so your friends and family can see where you are. The problem with Iridium Go is that it's really expensive for what it is. The amount of money we spent on Iridium Go was not worth the service that we were getting. We used it last season maybe for a week, but we paid for every month because if you stop your contract with them, they require you to activate a new SIM card every time you start the service again. A really old and cockamamie way to do things, but that's Iridium Go. So certainly did not get a lot of value out of it last season. Likewise, we had it this season, and the only reason we had it was because we were participating in the Salty Dog Rally down to Bahamas, and they required 2 forms of satellite communication. And we weren't sure whether we were going to get Starlink at that point. So we had it on, I paid for it again, and it was never used this season at all. So I don't think that that upgrade was useful. It might have been useful a couple of years ago, but technology has changed so fast, it's become obsolete. There's no point in having it anymore. Not even as a backup. You can just go get one of these, it's a Garmin device, and have that available. So when you're doing longer passages, if you need to make communication and Starlink is not working, then you can use that and you can message people. I think that's really all you need for the kind of cruising we're doing. We're not making a 30-day passage to the Pacific. We're doing, you know, overnights here and there, and we did one 6-day passage, and we had that. It was fine. So I would not recommend Iridium Go as an upgrade anymore. We didn't find it useful. We spent a lot of money and didn't get a lot out of it. One of the other upgrades that we did, which ended up being quite expensive, was installing a Pepwave dome up on our mast. It's that little guy up there. That is an LTE modem. Now, the idea was to have that guy up there to give us increased cellular range. So when we would get to a country, we could buy a SIM card, put it in there, and even if we were 15, 20 miles offshore, it would still work. Or if we were behind some land, it would still work. The problem with Peplink is the equipment that we bought did not work. I was able to get it to work one time in one harbor. And I'm a computer engineer. I know how to do networking. I know how software works. And I will always blame myself before blaming hardware. But I could never get it to work. I even found another Leopard 45 with the exact same setup. Same dome, same networking hardware. They came over with their configuration, loaded it onto our system, put their SIM card in, and it still didn't work. I worked back and forth with Pepwave for a couple of months. They were great, their customer support was great, but we were remote. I wasn't in any position where I could go climb up the mast, uninstall all of the equipment, and ship it somewhere. We were in the Bahamas. And so I let it go, knowing that Starlink was getting closer to being a reality. And I figured we'd reassess at the beginning of this season. As it turned out, Starlink was a reality, and we got a Starlink RV unit right before we left Norfolk for our passage over to the Virgin Islands. So I did a self-install. It's mounted back here. That's a fishing rod holder and a rubber collar just to keep things dry. We fished the wires all the way through to that plug that was powering the Iridium Go before. It all worked out very nicely, and Starlink has really been a game changer as far as internet goes. It doesn't seem to go down. We have interruptions here and there, but we're able to do phone calls and video calls. I'm able to upload videos. I even did a video call with my father while we had a bunch of dolphins in front of the boat, and I was able to share that experience with them real time. It is very neat, and one of our favorite upgrades to the boat. So getting back to the Pepwave stuff, we didn't find that useful at all. It just didn't work. It wasn't our fault. It wasn't Pepwave's fault. Things break. It could have been anything. But we just never got around to fixing it because, again, technology took over and Starlink was available. Starlink made that equipment obsolete. And so it's not that we were unhappy with Pepwave. It's just it's not a sensible upgrade for the way we cruise. If you have Starlink and you can go use cellular if you need to, then there's really no point to having an LTE modem installed on your mast anymore. By using Starlink, we wouldn't have spent the money on Pepwave. We wouldn't have purchased Iridium Go. We wouldn't have needed the XM radio because we just use Pandora. So Starlink replaces a lot of stuff that we spent money and time on. It's really a big deal. I hope it continues in its present form because we enjoy it and we see a lot of boats out here with it. It's just awesome.
Yeah, what are you doing? Get out of here. Huh?
There were two more small upgrades that we did that I think are worth mentioning. And I'm gonna lump two into one here as well. When we got our solar arch installed, we got a shower put onto it. Now, I thought at the time that that was a little silly and extravagant. I'm pretty sure it wasn't cheap to do. And when we got it, They didn't have the right stainless steel for this piece right here. And so we had some crummy material that was just all corroded. I had this made in Antigua, and that part alone cost $200. So I'm sure this wasn't inexpensive because we had to have new water lines run. We wanted to keep the existing wash there available. We wanted this added. So it was probably a pretty pricey upgrade, but we use it a lot. When we come back to the boat from snorkeling or swimming or doing anything really, we hop in the shower. In fact, I have a bar of soap sitting right here so that I can count it as a real shower. It's definitely worth doing if you're gonna go ahead and have this arch installed. Go ahead and get this done. You'll use it. It's something that you'll find brings you joy. Looking back, would we do this again? Yeah, definitely. I think it's a cool feature and something we use all the time, so why not? Now, when Just Cats was rigging this up, there was another request that I had made, and they did it at the same time, and that is they added a deck wash to the back of the boat right here. So a deck wash is just a place you can plug a hose into, and it was an option to have one deck wash put in at the front of the boat. This was not an option from Leopard, which seems crazy because it's not like there's a lot of foot traffic up on the front deck. There's a lot of foot traffic back here. This gets filthy all the time. You need to be able to wash things off. And the last thing you want to do is snake a hose all the way from the chain locker up front back here whenever you want to clean it up. So adding this ended up being pretty important. Again, we use this thing every day. It's a very useful upgrade. And going back in time, would we do it again? Well, of course. It's something that we use all the time. So when you get your boat, you get mattresses. Every bed has it, and they're actually quite comfortable. We've slept on them many times, but we figured if we were going to be living on the boat, we might as well spend a little bit more and make our bed a little bit more comfortable. We started looking at it, and custom mattresses were really expensive. I think they were $3,000 or $4,000, maybe even $5,000, which seemed like a big expense, not knowing whether we would like it or not. So we figured there's got to be a middle ground. And we found that middle ground when we went to the Annapolis Boat Show, and we were walking through and saw lots of different vendors that made custom mattress toppers. So we chose one, and they came out to our boat in Florida and measured our bed and came back about a week later with a mattress topper that looks like this. Now it's decently thick and it fits right on top of the mattress that is there. Sheets still fit just fine, and it's a big difference. We've really enjoyed sleeping on this. If you're sleeping comfortably, then everything else kind of goes easy on the boat. For something that we use on a daily basis, this has been great, and it's held up. It's been a very good mattress topper. I can't remember the name of the company that made it for us, but I'll stick it at the bottom of the screen. And we certainly would go and do this again. So all in all, this was a cool upgrade, and it wasn't that expensive. So that's it. Those were all the upgrades we've done over the last 18 months. And for the most part, we use all the upgrades and we're happy with them. And we'd certainly do them again, given the chance. The only things that we don't use are things that were made obsolete by technology. So I think we ended up with a pretty good selection of upgrades that fit with how we sail and how we live as a family on the boat. Thanks so much for watching. We really enjoy sharing our stories with our friends and family. I have a massive amount of footage from Guadalupe, where we are right now, and I look forward to putting all that together. We climbed a volcano, we went to waterfalls, and we're still here. We're gonna be here for another couple of weeks. So stay tuned. There should be some really cool videos coming. If you want to see what we're up to on a daily basis, go check us out on Instagram. There's the link, and we'll see you next week.